If you're struggling to find ADHD care right now, you're not alone. Every day we hear from families and adults who can't get calls returned, can't find providers, or don't know where to start. In this Ask the Expert conversation, we're going to talk about what's really going on and what you can do right now to move forward.
Welcome to CHAD Ask the Expert. I'm Lizette, Health Information Specialist with CHAD, and I am joined by Gabriela. Today we're talking about access to ADHD care. Before we begin, we want you to know this. If you are having a hard time accessing ADHD care, you are not alone, and you don't have to figure things out by yourself.
At CHAD, we're here to help. Every day, we connect with parents, adults, educators, and caregivers who are facing many of the same challenges and questions you may be facing right now.
CHAD exists to offer trusted information, practical support, and a strong sense of community. So you don't have to navigate ADHD care without guidance or connection.
Whether you're looking for support, credible resources, or people who understand what you're going through, CHAD is here for you.
Today, you can learn more, find support, and connect with us anytime at chad.org. Before we begin, this is a quick note. This conversation is for general educational purposes and isn't a substitute for a personal medical advice. If you need advice for your situation, please talk with your healthcare provider.
Our guest is Carolyn Lynch-Parcells, MD, a board-certified pediatrician. She's also an assistant professor of pediatrics at the TCU Burnett School of Medicine. As a physician who has ADHD herself, she's especially focused on helping patients and families with ADHD and learning differences. She also speaks often to parents, students, and professionals about parenting, ADHD, depression and anxiety, stress, teen development, sexuality, and preparing for college.
Thanks for being here, Dr.
Thanks
Parcell.
for having me, ladies. I'm
Yes,
excited to do this. This is an important topic.
yes. So let's jump right in. So when people say they're struggling with access to ADHD care, what challenges are you hearing most often right now?
Oh my gosh, what challenges are we not having? That would be a shorter list. Let's start at the beginning, right? First, there's a challenge in finding providers who can even provide a diagnosis, right? And that's even more challenging as an adult or for adults seeking an initial diagnosis than it is even for kids. Then once you have the diagnosis, it's difficult to find medical providers, mental health providers, providers in general, right? Whichever route you're going or whatever part of treatment you're looking to get into, it's hard to find providers who specialize in ADHD or are have a comfort level or well versed in ADHD. And if we're talking about medications, it's particularly difficult to find medical providers who are comfortable prescribing for ADHD. And again, this is even more of an issue for adults than it is for kids, right? We're working on shifting that concept that ADHD is something that only happens in childhood into what we very well know about it now, which is, of course, it's affects us through the lifespan, but that is a slow change. And so still, the majority of the providers you find often are for kids or more comfortable with kids, teenagers, young adults, that kind of thing. So finding providers in and of itself is difficult, right? And then in addition to that, let's take medication as an example. And yes, medication is just one part of a complete treatment plan. Thank you very much. But let's take medication for an example, because that is one of the best examples. So first, we've had difficulty finding somebody to diagnose. Now we've had difficulty finding someone to prescribe. We've actually found these people. We've actually been prescribed medication. Now we have difficulty getting the medication. Okay. We have difficulty getting the medication for several reasons. The gold standard is still stimulant medications, and stimulant medications are controlled substances, which also means that the supply of those is controlled. So we can have difficulty with access to those medications because of the actual supply available. We can have difficulty having access to those medications because of cost or because of insurance coverage. The other reason we can have a lot of difficulty with access to not only the providers, but to the medications is stigma. There is a lot of stigma around these medications. There is a lot of myths and misconceptions. And unfortunately, some of those stigmas and myths and misconceptions exist even within the medical community, even within the pharmacy community, which can also make it hard for us to access treatment, in particular medication treatment. And then, those are just kind of the logistical things, the initial logistical things, right? Then add to that the fact that the system is not set up for ADHD people. Okay. Because they're controlled substances, we can only prescribe 1 month at a time, which means we have to try to remember to call for our medication, go get the medication, and take the medication when the medication is what lets us remember to do those things. Right? And not only that, but we can't even be completely on top of it because they won't fill our medicine more than a day or two, if that, ahead of time. Right?
Right.
Okay. So the system is very much not set up for the way our brains work, for us to easily access care, even once we found the prescriber and the medication that works and that we can afford, right? So there's all of those things. And then, of course, there's stigma, there's myths and misconceptions. Those things contribute not only to the access itself, the logistical issues, but of course to our own challenges with allowing ourselves or allowing our loved ones to seek care and maintain care. And I think one of the biggest barriers to care is shame. Is the idea that I should not need medication or I should not need treatment to do these basic things. I'm a physician, I'm a mom, I'm a business owner. I shouldn't need medication to make sure I get through my email or to find my keys in the morning or to find my shoes before I leave to go pick up my kid. Right? I shouldn't. And so, and as a parent, there's a lot of that shame in the context of, well, I should be able to parent my child better. They shouldn't need medication. They wouldn't need medication if I was a better parent. So that's my giant soapbox Reader's Digest version.
Yeah, and with all that, it does become very overwhelming, like you said, even for like the parent, even for one, right, to seek. But what would you recommend as the first step, not to kind of feel that way, just to kind of step back and breathe? What would be your recommendations?
I think same thing we kind of always have to do with almost everything, especially as people with ADHD. And I say this, I have y'all seen the whole analogy of like a spoon versus a fork, right? When it comes to getting stuff done or tasks. So there was a analogy floating around the intranets called the spoon theory, with the idea that spoons, you wake up with a certain number of spoons, and the spoons are the energy you have to do things. And not everybody wakes up with the same number of spoons. Right? And it was originally a concept that was used to describe what it's like to live with chronic illness, right? So someone with a chronic illness may wake up with 10 spoons on one morning and 5 spoons with another morning, right? Well, the ADHD community got a hold of this and went, aha, but we have forks, because every task for us is like 4 or 5 tasks, right? It's not just taking a shower. It's stopping what I'm doing, going to the bathroom, getting the water going, getting ready for my shower, getting in the shower, taking the shower, remembering each step of the shower, getting out of the shower, right? And when you say it that way, taking a shower doesn't sound overwhelming. Saying it that way is very overwhelming, right? So same kind of concept with this, or really anything we need to do with ADHD where we feel overwhelmed. 1 fork at a time, and then 1 prong. 1 prong. Okay. So to that point, if it is somebody, say it's somebody who has not been diagnosed yet. Okay. Prong number 1 is just start with your primary care doctor. Okay. If you do not have a primary care doctor, start with getting a primary care doctor. Okay. If you have a primary care doctor, call or go visit and say, hey, this is my concern. Is this something that you do? Or do you know, or is there someone you can refer me to? Your primary care doctor, God willing, will know the resources in the area. Now, not all areas have the same resources, but it's at least the best way to start. If you already see a therapist, start with your therapist, right? If you're already seeing a coach, start with your coach. Whoever you have access to, start there. Okay. If you don't have someone, start with finding a primary care provider. And one of the best ways to do that is just ask around. Yes, you can Google. You can look on the website and see, do they list ADHD as one of the things that they do? If they do list ADHD on their website, then they like to do it because nobody lists it if they don't like to do it. Doesn't mean they're good at it, but at least means they're willing, right? But ask around. Ask around. And if you have friends or family or know other parents who have kids who have ADHD, what have you, ask them who they see, ask them who they like, right? So that's the first way. And really, I think that kind of brings me back around to one of the biggest things that helps in every stage of this and just overall is finding your community, finding your people. If you don't have those people IRL, as the kids say, um, yeah, I try. Gen X, but I try. If you don't have those people in real life, you got to be careful with the online groups. You got to be careful with the online communities, but there are online communities that can help with that, and oftentimes are also local. One of my big favorite resources, and I'm not just saying it because I'm on here with you guys, is the CHAD website, right?
Mhm.
We do have a provider listing, right? A provider resource. Speaking of CHAD, because I think this is an amazing resource too, is find your local chapter or the chapter closest to you, which you can also do on the website. And a lot of the chapters, so much of what the chapters do is online now or is virtual, that
Yeah.
even if you live somewhere else, you can chime into their meetings. But the nice thing about if you have a local group, the great thing about that is then that can also be a great resource for who are the people, who are the providers that I can go to who can help me with this, right? You don't have to try to recreate the wheel on your own. So that's for finding the diagnostic, but then also for finding a prescribing provider. There are PCPs out there, pediatricians, family practice, internal medicine. There are those out there that are comfortable with ADHD, or if you already have a diagnosis, prescribing. And most PCPs, there are PCPs like me, because I'm general pediatrician. And there's not a lot of us who specialize in it to the extent that I do, but a lot of folks have a special interest in it. Even if they don't have a special interest in it, if they're at least willing to prescribe and if they're willing to have that therapeutic relationship with you and learn with you, then that's still a good place to start. Most folks who are in primary care who do this work usually have a handful of medicines that they're comfortable with. That's when I was a general pediatrician, it was the same way. For each issue, I had, my set options for what were gold standard. And then whether it was for asthma, birth control, ADHD, whatever it was, and then if they went past that level of expertise for me, then I referred them on, right, to a specialist. And there are PCPs who are like that with ADHD. Now, if your PCP doesn't do that, then hopefully, right, they should have resources to refer on, whether that is primary care, whether that is psychiatry, whether that is neurology or developmental peds. There's several different kind of, it's one of those conditions where different specialties can kind of come into the mix, right? But that's where I always tell people to start with who you've got. And if you don't have someone or you don't have someone that you feel like is providing the resources you need, find your people in your area, right? ADHD affects 10 to 15% of the population. There's people in your area.
For those who are not insured, what would be like a safe bridge to support them in the meantime of maybe applying for like government assistance or maybe trying to do it out of pocket?
So uninsured covers a range of people with a range of resources, right? Because I've taken care of uninsured folks who are uninsured because the parents own their own business and they do very well and they can afford even without insurance, they can afford whatever resources they need. I've
Mm.
taken care of folks that are uninsured and do not have resources. And I've taken care of, really, frankly, people all these days. I've taken care of people all throughout the spectrum on that. So, you know, I always try not to assume what resources somebody has,
Right.
right? Unless they share, because I don't know their whole situation. I don't know what other expenses they have. As far as finding care, so, certainly if you qualify for government assistance, for example, here and every place is different, every state is different, and every county is different. So, for example, here I live and work in Tarrant County. Okay, we have what's called MHMR. Okay, and that is the county resource for mental and behavioral and developmental health, right? So folks can go there and get free to low cost care. That's one
Mhm.
option. So your county resources, your local resources, your state resources, um, can certainly be helpful. As far as finding those, that can be tricky too. Frankly, Googling.
Yeah.
But one of my favorite resources, and it depends on, you can find these people depending on what kind of stage of life you're in, but social workers, also
Mhm.
known as angels sent from heaven.
Yes.
Social workers, care coordinators. So for example, if you have a pediatrician and you are already on some sort of, federal payer like Medicaid or what have you, not all pediatric clinics, but a lot of them will have a social worker or care coordinator who can help you find those resources. If you don't have that and you are talking about a child, and they go to public school, oftentimes the school nurse or the school counselor or the learning specialist or whoever manages IEPs and 504 plans will have those resources, right? Or we'll be able to direct you to the person who has those resources. If we're talking about an adult, um, let's say we're talking about somebody who's in college, community college or four-year college, student center, okay? Student center or student learning center. Those folks often have the resources or can point you to the person who has the resources. Now, again, adults,
Yeah.
we do not have as many resources, and it's just not as straightforward, right, in finding those resources as an adult. So again, oftentimes your primary care provider, if you have one, but of course, if you're uninsured, you may not. You may not. So again, it depends on the county. There's health centers, there's like the county health center. That's the word I'm like, what's the word I'm looking for? Those can sometimes be helpful, but also, of course, I do understand that, especially when it comes to something like ADHD, there's often significant waits. And the not fun but genuine answer is we need more resources, we need more funding, and we need more
Yeah.
providers.
Yeah, no.
Because there's just not enough of us to go around. We don't have the infrastructure we need to adequately take care of people at all levels of resource. But that doesn't mean we can't still find those resources.
We do have some families and some callers that do call, our health information line, and they say that, they're probably not, they don't have an availability, they're not following up, um, or like you said, difficulty finding a provider who doesn't return a phone call. Um, how can a family navigate that without burning out?
Oh, 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 if I had the answer to that question. Okay. So, I'm actually really glad you used the word burning out, because part of why there are so many reasons, more than we can address in this one talk, as to why we don't have enough providers and why they're experiencing what they're experiencing with providers, not the least of which is your providers are burned out. The best thing to do is, it's a little bit tricky because I always tell people you catch more bees with honey. Okay.
Yeah.
When you call, even if you haven't gotten a call back, and even if it's really hard to do this, don't call back and be mad and upset and angry and frustrated. Take a breath before you make that phone call. Call and go, hey, hey, it's so-and-so's mom again. How are you? I know things are crazy. How are you? You doing okay? I know it's a lot. Hey, so anyway, I know I called about that refill earlier, and I was really trying to be patient, but we're like one pill away. Is there any way you can get that filled for me like today? Okay. Way more effective. Also, when you call for that refill, tell them how many pills you have left. Okay. Tell them how many pills you have left. Because when I have literally 60 refills in my task box in one day, I have to prioritize because I physically cannot send all of them in one day. So I'm, of course, going to prioritize the ones who are out or almost out or whatever, right? And so those are kind of like, and I know I hate to tell people to play the game a little bit, but it's not just playing the game. It's treating others the way you want to be treated. And of course, we're always going to respond better when somebody, you know, is respectful to us, but also understands the stress that we're going through, right? That's for the refill call. For the follow-up call, those are hard, right? And again, it's a tricky thing. One of the things I would love to see, and some offices are doing this, is we need better systems in place. We need better systems in place for things like refills, for things like, follow-up appointments and that kind of thing. But perfect example is say you are established with somebody, and if the issue what they're talking about is getting back in for follow-up, always, always, always schedule your follow-up before you leave. When you're at the office, when you're staring the person in the face at checkout, even if you don't know what your schedule is, even if you're not sure you can do it, schedule your follow-up. Okay?
Because you can always reschedule.
Because you can always reschedule. It also means as an ADHD person, right? Because the minute we walk out, this is the minute we're going to forget. Okay? So you don't forget. Then you inevitably get the reminder. Pay attention to the reminders, right? So that if you're like, oh crap, nope, I can't do that again. Okay, fine. But then you can hit the little button to reschedule, right? The other thing is when you call for that refill and they already see you have an appointment scheduled, they're going to move on that refill a lot faster than if you don't have your follow-up scheduled. Because we hold medicine for ransom to make sure you do your follow-up. Okay? Okay. Okay. I do not let my patients go without their meds, but look, I take care of people with ADHD. I get it. I have a lot of grace. There's no judgment here. It's just, I got to see you and make sure you're doing okay to continue your meds because that's how I take the best care of you, right?
People move, they change insurances, and they age out of pediatrics, right? What is the most important step to take when a care is, interrupted?
I know with those people who are aging out, they're trying to find their autonomy. Parents are trying to let them go a little bit. What are some tips for those people who are aging out and becoming young adults to know about the healthcare system in that way? Like what records should be taken into consideration, like the diagnosis notes, the rating scales, the medical history, treatment plan, etc.
So I love this question because this is what my entire clinic is based around, or at least sort of. No, I love that the transition from teenaginess to pseudo-adultiness that's my jam. That we do this a lot in my office. So here's what I'm going to tell you. First and foremost, start young. Now, when I say start young, I don't mean if they're leaving your house at 18, I'm not talking 17. I'm not even talking 16. I'm not talking 15. I'm talking 10, 11. Okay. We are talking to them about why, if they take meds, why do you take what meds do you take? When do you take them? Why do you take them? What are they supposed to do? Right? Engaging them in, I'm not saying let the 10-year-old be responsible for taking their own meds, but sort of let your 10-year-old be responsible for taking their own meds. Okay.
With guidance.
Right. So include them. The term is collaborative problem solving, right? We all struggle with medication consistency. And I said consistency, not compliance, for a reason. Don't like the word compliance. It means we're doing it on purpose. Consistency. We struggle with consistency, right? So this is a conversation pretty much almost all of us have. So engage the child early on, immediately, pretty much as soon as they're on medications, right? Engage them in these conversations. Hey, bud, what do you think would help you remember? Right? What do you think would, let's talk about some stuff. Do you think this would help? Do you think this would help? So engage them in that. It teaches them problem solving skills, right? It also gives them agency. Okay. And it starts the process of teaching them how to be responsible for their own care and for their body. Okay. So that's the first part. So we start young. We as they get older, one of the analogies that a colleague of mine used to use is it's like raising a teenager is like flying a kite. Okay. You're not holding them down to the ground, but you're also not letting go of the string. Okay.
Right.
And I've kind of taken that a little bit further, and I tell parents, ideally you want to be standing there, holding the string, watching the kite fly, right? But we're still going to hold the string so they don't fly into the tree or the electrical wires. Now, as they get older, as they catch more wind, we let more string out. However, this is not a unidirectional process. Again, like flying a kite, sometimes we're letting string out. Sometimes we're pulling it back in. Sometimes we're having the joy of standing there watching it fly, and sometimes we're running like hell to keep it in the air. Okay.
And just to wrap things up a little bit here, when it comes to evidence-based care and avoiding scams, I know as parents or as adults, we want answers right away. So I just want to go ahead and, get your intake when it comes to like key signs, and what should people, parents and adults look for?
And to your point, we do want, especially when it's your kid. I mean, you want fast answers when it's you, but when it's your kid, man, every minute feels like an hour, right? And then of course, as ADHD people, we really don't have the patience for it. But so yeah, so here's what I tell people, key things to look for. Key things to avoid, number one, okay? Regardless of degree level, regardless of training, regardless of whatever, anybody who talks in absolutes, steer clear. Okay. If it's, well, everybody, this works for everybody, or this doesn't work for anybody, or this doesn't, anything that's an always, never, this is what I always do, always, never, those, avoid. Okay. There's some medicines I'm not a big fan of. I still don't say it never works. I will occasionally say it on accident, and then I'll catch myself and be like, excuse me, doesn't work for most people. There are some people that it works for. Okay. So that's something. Okay.
Like being open-minded, like having
Yes. So you want providers who, people who are practicing evidence-based medicine or mental health care of any kind are not going to use absolutes, because we know there's no one size fits all, and we know the data is changing. Okay. So another phrase that I like to use that's a good one to listen for is when somebody says, well, based on the data right now, or based on the research we have right now, right? Or based on what I've read, right? Because we're acknowledging that our knowledge is incomplete. Okay. The other thing is, if it's somebody, you want a team relationship. You want someone who's going to listen to you and respect you, right? If you bring something you've seen on TikTok, on the internet, or an article you've read, the response should always be either, oh yeah, I heard about this and these are my thoughts, or this is what the research says about that, or, you know what, I don't know, but I will find out. I teach my medical students all the time. I don't know is never the right answer, but I don't know, but I will find out is always the right answer. Okay. When somebody brings, it's so cute because of course, I take care of teenagers. So I love when they ask me a question or ask me my opinion on something and I go, oh, it's interesting. Where did you read that? Or where did you hear about that? And they'll go, I'm like, it's okay. You can tell me. And they're like, TikTok. And I'm like, that's okay. I'm like, I'd rather you ask me right?
Right.
And let me help you figure out what's correct, right? And there's been times where patients have brought, because I can't read all the research. There's only
Right.
24 hours in a day. I've had patients bring stuff to me and say, "Hey, have you heard about this?" I'm like, either no, I haven't, or I've heard about it, but I don't know the research. And then I go and do the research and we can have the conversation, right? That's the kind of conversations you're talking about. And that's coming back to providers. Like I said, there are providers out there. When I said somebody who's willing to listen and learn, right? You may have a provider who may not be super specialized in ADHD, but they're comfortable with it and they're willing to listen and they're willing to learn and they're willing to do this journey with you, right? They're worth their weight in gold.
Mhm.
Okay. Um, so those are the kinds of things, those are the kinds of responses and reactions you want to be looking for. Um, if they like, okay, I'm going to tread lightly on this one. If they're selling something other than their own, medical or coaching or whatever services, if we're selling supplements, if we're selling wellness products, if we're selling whatever, that doesn't by definition mean that that product isn't good or that they're not, or they're, shyster or anything like that. It does not mean that by definition. But I do think it means you want to be judicious in how you assess that situation.
Have
And
discernment.
right. And how you, okay. And I'll be honest, like, for example, for me, there are supplements I use for my patients for ADHD because they're evidence-based and there's more data growing for them, right? And, but again, that's not to say that people who are doing that are necessarily doing the wrong thing. You just want to make sure that they are doing it in the right way and the right way for you, right? And in particular, if they say everything else is bad and the only thing that's good is this thing I'm selling, that's the real red flag, right? Um, when it comes to trying to figure out if they are comfortable with ADHD, again, that's usually pretty easy to figure out pretty quick, right? If it's on their website, they're at least comfortable with it because they're not putting it on the website if they're not comfortable with it. Now, they might be comfortable with it even if it's not on their website. Um, then that doesn't tell you they're doing evidence-based, but then you can have the conversation and pick up on how they're doing things and asking the question, "Hey, how do you approach this?" Or "What are your views on this?" Or "How do you usually approach ADHD?" And let them tell you. And you can pick up a lot from that, and what you're comfortable with. And does it vibe? Are the vibes vibing? Right?
Yeah.
Does it vibe with the way you want to approach things for you or your kids or what have you? And it has to be one of the biggest things I'll say is this. It has to be a trust relationship. I don't care who it is. If you don't have that relationship with them, if you don't feel like if you don't feel heard or you don't feel like you're on the same page and can get the care you need, it's never going to be the best fit for you, right? Now, sometimes we have to take what we can get until we can
Mhm.
find something else. But ultimately, ideally, right, is that's what you're looking for, is you're looking for somebody who will partner with you in this journey because no two journeys are the same.
Yes, I completely agree. Well, I do want to say thank you, Dr. Purcell. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your expertise, and thank you everyone watching. And for more information and resources, please visit us at CHADD, and it's at chadd.org, or you could call the health information line at 1-866-200-8090. We are available from 1 to 5 Eastern Standard Time. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As we wrap up, we want to thank you for spending this time with us. We know that navigating ADHD care can be challenging, and we hope this conversation helped you feel more informed and more supported.
And remember, you don't have to do this alone. CHADD is here to help you with trusted information, practical resources, and a community that understands the realities of ADHD.
CHADD offers support in both English and Spanish, along with connections to local chapters, online support groups, and trained health information specialists who can help you through your next steps.
You can find resources, learn about support options, and connect with the CHADD community anytime at chadd.org.
Thank you for being here and for being part of the CHADD community.